Welcome back to Books and Bytes, where we break down the best books in minutes to help you supercharge your learning. And today, we're diving deep into The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung.
Oh, a fascinating choice.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, you might be thinking, another diet book,
Right.
but this one is really different.
Yeah.
Dr. Fung, he's a nephrologist, so a kidney specialist, and that gives him a really unique perspective on obesity, and the long-term health impacts.
It is interesting because he's seeing the consequences of, chronic diseases that are related to obesity every day in his practice. And it's that experience that really led him to challenge the conventional wisdom that it's just calories in, calories out.
Exactly. That's what's so interesting about the Obesity Code. It's not just how much you eat, but it's really what you eat and when you eat that really matters. And the real game changer here.
Insulin.
Insulin, yeah. He calls it the fat storage hormone.
I like that.
So think of it this way. When you eat, your body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose, which then enters your bloodstream.
Right.
And insulin's job is to help move that glucose into your cells for energy.
Okay.
But here's the catch. Certain foods, like all those processed goodies, sugary drinks that we all love, they cause your insulin levels to, spike,
Okay. So I'm picturing this massive surge of insulin flooding my system after I have a donut. What happens then?
Well, when there's more glucose than your cells need at that moment, then insulin directs the excess to be stored as fat.
Oh.
So even if you're technically within your calorie limit, if those calories are coming from foods that are really triggering these big insulin spikes, you're likely going to store more fat.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about the amount of fuel, but the type of fuel and how it impacts your body's hormonal response. So does this mean snacking, even on healthy snacks, could be sabotaging our weight loss efforts?
It's a great question. It's one that Dr. Fung addresses in the book. Our ancestors, didn't have access to food 24/7. They evolved to go through periods of eating and fasting.
Yeah. This natural cycle allowed their insulin levels to drop, giving their bodies a chance to burn stored fat for energy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've outsmarted ourselves with this constant snacking, right? We're disrupting these natural hormonal rhythms.
Exactly.
So if we follow that logic, could strategically incorporating periods of fasting help us get back on track?
That's exactly where Dr. Fung leads us. He talks about intermittent fasting.
Okay. Now, I've heard a lot about intermittent fasting, but to be honest, I always thought it sounded a bit extreme. Is it really just about, skipping meals?
Well, it's not about starving yourself.
Okay.
It's more about creating a pattern of eating and not eating that works with your body's natural hormonal cycles.
Okay.
Intermittent fasting is simply a way to extend those periods when your body's not producing insulin, giving it a chance to tap into stored fat for energy.
Okay, so it's less about deprivation and more about strategic timing.
Yeah.
But are there different ways to do intermittent fasting?
Absolutely. Dr. Fung outlines several approaches in the book, each with its pros and cons. There's the popular 168 method, where you fast for 16 hours and have an 8-hour window for eating. Some people prefer alternate day fasting, where you eat normally one day and then you restrict calories the next. And then there are longer fasts, like a 24-hour fast, once or twice a week.
Okay.
The key is finding what fits your lifestyle and your body's responses.
This is already making me rethink my 3 p.m. chocolate craving.
Yeah, me too.
But seriously, wouldn't skipping meals make you feel sluggish and mess with your metabolism?
It's a very common concern.
Yeah.
But Dr. Fung debunks that myth. He explains that when done correctly, fasting can actually boost your metabolism in the short term.
Oh, well.
It's like giving your body a metabolic reset,
Oh, okay.
And as long as you're eating enough protein during your eating windows, you won't lose muscle mass.
So it's less about reducing calories overall and more about shifting when you consume them to optimize your body's natural fat-burning mechanisms. That's fascinating. But I have to ask, what about the food itself?
Sure.
If we're focusing on managing insulin, wouldn't what we eat during those eating windows be crucial too?
Absolutely. It's not just about when you eat, but also what you eat. Dr. Fung's dietary recommendations prioritize foods that promote stable insulin levels.
Okay, so no more donuts during that 8-hour window.
Let's just say that a donut would probably send your insulin levels on a roller coaster ride.
Okay.
He advocates for a shift in focus, from calorie counting to prioritizing food quality.
Okay, so less about meticulously tracking every calorie and more about making smart food choices that work with our hormones rather than against them. Okay, this is all starting to click into place. But I'm curious, Where do we go from here? How do we apply this knowledge to create a sustainable approach to weight management?
That's a great segue into the next part of our deep dive. We've tackled the when with intermittent fasting, and now it's time to explore the what, the types of foods that help maintain those healthy insulin levels.
Okay, sounds good.
Right. So are you ready to ditch the calorie counting and start thinking about food in a whole new way? This is where the Obesity Code gets really practical.
I am. I'm all ears. Tell me more about these food choices that can, help us keep those insulin levels in check.
Well, first, it's about understanding how different types of foods impact your insulin response. Think of it like a spectrum.
Yeah.
On one end, you have refined carbohydrates and sugars, like those found in processed foods, white bread, sugary drinks.
Right, yeah.
These get absorbed really quickly into your bloodstream, causing those dramatic insulin spikes we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so those are the things we want to minimize.
Okay.
What about the other end of the spectrum?
On the opposite end, you have healthy fats and protein.
Okay.
These get digested more slowly, and they don't trigger the same insulin surge.
Okay.
They help you feel full and satisfied,
Right.
which can naturally curb those cravings for the sugary stuff.
So instead of reaching for that bag of chips when my energy dips, I should opt for like a handful of nuts or some Greek yogurt.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Think of it as swapping out quick-burning fuel for, slow-burning fuel.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, and then in the middle of the spectrum, you have those fiber-rich carbohydrates, like those found in vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. These have a more moderate impact on insulin because the fiber slows down the absorption of the sugar into your bloodstream.
So it's like fiber acts as a buffer, preventing those sudden spikes.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But this brings up a question. What about artificial sweeteners?
Oh, yeah.
They don't contain actual sugar, so wouldn't they be a good alternative for those of us with a sweet tooth?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
While artificial sweeteners may not directly raise blood sugar, some studies suggest that they can still trigger an insulin response.
Wow.
And what's even more concerning is they might actually increase cravings for sweet foods.
Really?
Yeah, leading you to overeat in the long run.
So those diet sodas might not be as guilt-free as we once thought.
Yeah.
Interesting. It seems like Dr. Fung's approach is really about getting back to basics, choosing whole, unprocessed foods that our bodies are, naturally designed to handle.
Exactly. It's not about following a restrictive diet. It's about making sustainable lifestyle changes that nourish your body and help it function optimally.
Right.
Dr. Fung, he even provides practical tips and recipes in the book so you can easily incorporate these principles into your daily routine.
That's really helpful. So we've covered with intermittent fasting, what with food choices that support healthy insulin levels.
Yeah.
But I remember you mentioning that stress plays a role in weight management too.
Absolutely. This is where the Obesity Code goes beyond just diet and addresses the often overlooked connection between stress and weight gain. When you're stressed, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, which can actually increase your appetite and promote fat storage, particularly around your midsection.
So that's why I always crave comfort food when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
It's like my body's going into survival mode, storing up energy in case I need to, fight or flee.
That's a great way to put it. Chronic stress can keep your cortisol levels elevated, making it harder to lose weight and increasing your risk for other health issues.
Oh.
That's why Dr. Fung emphasizes the importance of finding healthy ways to manage stress,
Right.
like getting enough sleep, practicing mindfulness, or spending time in nature.
It seems like everything is connected.
It is, yeah.
Our food choices impact our hormones.
Right.
Our stress levels impact our hormones.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it all influences our weight and overall well-being. This is such a holistic approach to health, which I really appreciate.
And that's what makes the Obesity Code so powerful.
Yeah.
It empowers you to understand the underlying mechanisms driving your body's responses and gives you the tools to make informed choices that support lasting health.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground, from the role of insulin to the importance of food quality and stress management.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But I'm curious, is there anything else in the book that really stood out to you?
One thing that really resonated with me was Dr. Fung's discussion of the long-term health implications of this approach.
Okay, let's dive into that. I'm ready to learn more. So we talked about how managing insulin can help with weight loss, but what about the bigger picture? How does this all tie into long-term health?
That's where the Obesity Code goes beyond your typical diet book,
Right.
Dr. Fung argues that by addressing insulin resistance, you're not just tackling weight,
Right.
you're potentially preventing a whole host of chronic diseases.
Okay, so we're talking about things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, maybe even certain types of cancer.
Exactly.
Those are some serious conditions.
They are, yeah. You see, when your body is constantly flooded with insulin, it can become resistant to its effects.
Yeah.
This leads to high blood sugar, which over time damages your blood vessels and increases the risk of those very diseases that you mentioned.
So it's not just about fitting into your old genes. It's about protecting your body from long-term damage.
Exactly.
That's a powerful motivator.
It is. And what's really exciting is that research is showing that reversing insulin resistance can actually help improve or even reverse some of these conditions.
So there's hope, even for people who have already been diagnosed with these diseases. That's incredibly encouraging. But before we get too carried away, I do want to acknowledge that, making these kinds of lifestyle changes can be challenging. Where would you recommend someone even begin?
That's a great point. It's important to start slowly and find what works for you.
Okay.
Dr. Fung emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
The book provides a lot of guidance.
Yeah.
But it's also crucial to listen to your body and consult with your healthcare provider, especially if you have any underlying health conditions.
That's such important advice. It's not about jumping into the most extreme form of fasting or drastically cutting out entire food groups. It's about making gradual, sustainable changes that fit into your lifestyle and support your overall well-being.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about making informed choices, not just blindly following a diet. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are tons of resources available, including online communities and support groups to help you along the way.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the Obesity Code.
It has, yeah.
We've learned so much about the role of insulin, the importance of food quality, stress management, and the potential to not just lose weight, but prevent chronic disease. It's truly empowering.
It is. And for anyone listening who's intrigued by this new way of thinking about weight loss and health, I highly recommend checking out the book.
Yeah.
Dr. Fung does a fantastic job of breaking down complex science into clear, actionable steps.
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely a must-read for anyone who wants to move beyond the frustrating cycle of fad diets and discover a more sustainable path to health and well-being. So as we wrap up this episode, what's one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important message is that you have more control over your health than you might realize. By understanding how your body works and making informed choices about what you eat, when you eat, and how you manage stress, you can unlock your body's natural ability to regulate insulin, burn fat, and achieve lasting well-being.
That's such a powerful and hopeful message. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Obesity Code.
It's been my pleasure.
And all our listeners out there, we hope you've gained some valuable insights today. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those bodies moving. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.